How's it going, everyone? It's all Reform Weather SpongeBob. Today is December 5th, 2021, and today we're going to focus on the current major snowstorm that's impacting the Great Lakes region at this time and our future snowstorm that could impact the Northeast later this week. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content. Make sure to like if you like this video, and make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather-related content. So let's begin by taking a look at the United States radar at this time, and of course we do see this snowstorm moving through the northern Midwest at this time, and it's bringing a decent amount of snow, especially towards the northern portion of Michigan, as well as a little bit of Wisconsin as well, where you're seeing some snow showers. However, this band of snow is expected to eventually move east for you guys, so for places I'd say just west of Green Bay, or at least the coast of Wisconsin, the snow should end for you guys relatively soon as the slow process continues to move east. But you see that Michigan still has a pretty long way to go, as we still have the rest of the snow band to go before the snow eventually begins to settle down for you guys. But if we were to take a zoom in, you see that we're seeing heavier snow bands develop in the northern portion of Michigan, as we're seeing a large amount of cold air move up on the backside of this low pressure system, and it's creating a warm air advection for a lot of lift in the atmosphere to occur, and that's really helping develop some of these heavier snow bands, and it should continue for the rest of the night for northern Michigan. If we were to take a look at how this will look in the future, you see that we could see the snow bands develop a little bit, you see, later during the night, because of course as this jet stream dips further southward, so the winds will increase as a result of the cooler air being closer to the warmer air that's further southward, and that will create more of a contrast when it comes to air density for the wind to be a little bit stronger, because of course a more dense and cooler air mass will want to filter into a warmer air mass, and as it does so, it sort of accelerates the process of lift in the atmosphere for a lot more water vapor to rise up into the higher elevations, and it'll dump more precipitation as a result and develop more of these snow bands and rain showers as a result of just enough instability as it heads further eastward. And this will mean that the snow will continue for several hours throughout northern Michigan, extending to the very late night hours into tonight and maybe into early tomorrow morning. And you see that while the Northeast isn't expected to be impacted by a lot of snow, since there's going to be just enough warm air, you need to watch out in the higher elevations of the Northeast and those in the interior portions of the Northeast. Now let's take a look at the computer models and their forecast for the future. So if we were to continue to move forward, you see that while the jet stream dip will become a little bit more pronounced as this low pressure heads further eastward, and the low pressure system will strengthen as a result of that enhancement of instability throughout the eastern half of the United States, you see that the rain snow line is expected to move further northward, because as the jet stream dip becomes more pronounced, so will the direction of the winds aloft with the jet stream will change from more of a westerly to easterly direction to more of a southerly to northerly direction, which would mean that the low pressure is bound to move a little bit more northward, which would steer the warm air further northward as well for that rain snow line move a little bit further northward. So as a result, pretty much most of the Northeast will miss out on the heavier snow from this, but you could still see heavy snow in Maine, so watch out for that, and maybe in the extreme higher elevations and on the backside of this low pressure system as well. That's certainly a possibility. And you might be wondering what type of snowfall accumulation you should expect from this first snowstorm moving through. If we were to take a look at that, you're going to see that there's this forecast is still a lot of snow for you guys. Of course, for a lot of areas such as just west of Green Bay, the snow has already fallen for you guys, so don't expect as much snow, but you could easily receive close to a foot, if not over a foot, in some localized areas in northern Michigan, as well as the extreme northern portion of Wisconsin. But just south that, you could still experience 3 to 6 inches, so watch out for heavy snow in those areas. But outside of that, this shouldn't impact much of the Northeast. So this won't be a major thing to worry about beyond, let's say, tomorrow, where the low pressure system will move eastward, and the rain snow line will move further northward for the snow not to impact the interior Northeast. So it won't be much of a worry beyond tomorrow. But now let's move on to our next topic, which is a potential major Northeast snowstorm that could impact a lot of the eastern half of the United States into the midweek this week. But there have been quite a bit of changes regarding the forecast with this snowstorm over the past several days, because just yesterday, the forecast was bringing quite a major and very concerning snowstorm to a lot of the Northeast, and this wasn't only exclusively impacting the interior Northeast, but it's impacting the more populated areas such as Boston, New York City, Philadelphia, as some of the computer model runs were forecasting maybe close to a foot of snow in the New York City metropolitan area, which would be major if that scenario were the case. But we've seen a complete change with the computer model's forecast for today. And for some of you who do not like the snow, this might be good news, because the GFS model isn't forecasting a snowstorm as significant as it was before, because you see that while the GFS still does forecast a low pressure system to move eastward, it expects it to be a lot weaker than initially anticipated. And you see that the snow band that's going to be just to the north of this low pressure system is going to be much less potent than it was initially anticipated to be. So as a result, it won't bring as much cold air, and as a result, there won't be as much instability right around the eastern half of the United States to induce a lot of lift for more precipitation to occur and to see heavier bands of precipitation develop as this heads further eastward, which for those who don't like the snow might be good news, but might be bad news for those who want to see some snow, as it seems like the low pressure system has weakened, is expected to be weaker than expected as it moves eastward. Again, there's still uncertainty with this, because like we've been seeing with the computer models over the past several days, they've been changing a lot. So I wouldn't rule out the possibility that we continue to see changes over the next 3 to 4 days when this low pressure system is expected from now until the low pressure is expected to impact the Northeast. I wouldn't be surprised if we do still see some pretty significant changes, because while the forecast around 3 days out still is a little bit more certain, it's still far from certain, especially when we've seen the two main computer models change their forecasts every so often to such a drastic change. So we certainly need to pay close attention to any changes with the forecast over the next several days. But as of right now, the GFS model is forecasting a weaker snowstorm, where you see it primarily only affects Kentucky, West Virginia, and it does impact a little bit of Washington, D.C., as the GFS model does expect cold air in this scenario to be a little bit further southward. So if a more significant snowstorm were to form, then that would mean that more areas further southward, such as Northern Virginia and around the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, would be impacted by a snowstorm. But the thing is, with this low pressure system that the GFS model wants to develop, it's fairly weak, and it won't really develop at a fast enough rate early enough to really bring that heavy precipitation to the Northeast. It might develop into a pretty potent low pressure system as this heads further eastward, but by that time, it seems like the low pressure system is going to be well further to the east of the United States for the worst of snow to impact you guys, because by the time this reaches the Northeast, the GFS model isn't expecting a fully fledged or developed low pressure system to form, which would mean that the precipitation won't be as high in this scenario. But we still need to wait and see. Really all depends on how powerful this low pressure system coming off the Pacific Northwest ends up being, and that will be a big determinant in what type of impacts we'll see in the United States. We just need to wait and see when we just need to wait for this low pressure system to move to the Pacific Northwest to really get a good idea of how powerful this low pressure system will be by the time it reaches the Northeast to maybe experience our first major snowstorm. If we were to take a look at the European model, however, unlike the GFS model, which is at least taking some snow associated with that low pressure system to the Northeast, the European model isn't expecting much of any snow from this low pressure system. Of course, the European model still does bring a low pressure system along the East Coast, and it does eventually strengthen it, but the European model is expecting this low pressure system to stay well off the coast of the Northeast to bring any sort of impacts to the Northeast when it comes to snowfall. So with two of the main computer models in pretty big disagreements regarding the exact trajectory and the strength and the impacts you'll experience along the coast, it becomes very difficult to really nail down the forecast, even though we're around 3 to 4 days out from this low pressure system eventually reaching the Northeast. So there's still quite a bit of uncertainty for something that's around 3 to 4 days out, but I'll make sure to keep you guys updated. What really will determine what type of impacts you'll experience is how much unstable is, again, like I said, how powerful this low pressure system will be as it moves up Pacific Northwest, because if it's a little more powerful, that means that it could get its act together a little bit sooner rather than later, and as it does so, the precipitation area will be larger, and that means that the chances or the area of snowfall will be larger for a more significant snow event to occur. However, if the low pressure system ends up being what's forecast right now or even weaker, then we're less likely to see a major snowstorm, and there's still a possibility that pretty much all the Northeast doesn't experience a snowstorm at all out of this if the European model's case is correct, where the low pressure system mainly stays far out the coast. It really all depends on the position of this jet stream, and if we're going to see just enough of a tilt of the jet stream now steer the low pressure system further northward rather than eastward, but that still has yet to be seen. Really all depends on this first low pressure system moving through, because again, it'll bring a more pronounced jet stream dip to the United States for a potential turn to occur, depending on how much cold air there is throughout the United States. So if we were to move forward, like I said, here's the low pressure system, and the GFS model is still forecasting this low pressure system to be a little bit closer to the coast to bring some snow. And you might be asking, well, how much snow? If we were to take a look at that, while it certainly isn't as much as originally expected from the GFS model, it's still bringing a pretty large area of 1 to 3 inches and 3 to 6 further northward. If we were to take a look at the snow forecast over the next 110 hours, you see that still a lot of the let me update this to the more latest forecast run. This was the 12Z run. I'm moved to the 18Z run. You see that a good area of northern Virginia, as well as the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, and extending the Delaware Peninsula in a GFS model scenario, is still forecasting 3 to 6 inches of snow, which would be significant for you guys if the GFS model were correct. And this extends to West Virginia and Kentucky as well. And moving on to the Northeast, you see a large area of 3 to 6 inches and a little bit more in the higher elevations. But the European model, like I said, is a stark contrast where it isn't expecting any snow. So it becomes very difficult to forecast what exactly will happen. Again, it really all depends on the strength and the trajectory of this jet stream to really determine the snowfall. But as of right now, the European model isn't taking much of anything, maybe an inch or dusting right around West Virginia and Virginia, but outside of that, not really much, not really anything notable. But the GFS model is forecasting a more significant snowstorm, so it's going to be difficult to forecast over the next several days, but I'll make sure to update you guys with any forecasts with the computer models. And based on what's been happening, it seems like the GFS model might be playing a little bit of catch up with the European model when it comes to its forecast, because I've been noticing that the GFS model has sort of been leaning, after every run, been leaning more closer to the European model, bringing a little bit less snow than the run before it. But we have to see if that trend holds up. But a trend where it's leaning more, where the GFS model is leaning more towards the European model, might show a trend where we could eventually see the GFS model eventually give in and not expect any snow to the northeast, but we need to wait and see. Just a lot of uncertainty, but I'll say for northeast, at least be aware of this storm and at least prepare as if a snowstorm is happening, because the GFS model has been slightly a little bit more correct, but we can't disregard the European model either, so we just need to wait and see. But snow is currently forecast for a lot of northeast based on the GFS model, so you guys should at least be aware of the possibility of snowstorm midweek this week. Now, in terms of my snowfall accumulation forecast with these next two snowstorms, let's first start with the northern Midwest. So for most of you guys, you probably already experienced the heaviest and the worst of the snow and most of the snow. But it's going to be a lot of snow, as you see that for northern Michigan. I'm expecting 6 to 12 inches. And this extends the extreme northeastern portion of Minnesota as well, just to the northeast of Duluth, Minnesota. But you see 3 to 6 inches just south of that, including Green Bay, so that's still pretty significant. And 1 to 3 just south of that, and this will include Minneapolis as well. So you might need to shovel out the snow in Minneapolis for tonight or into tomorrow, as this snowstorm has pretty much passed through you guys for right now. And in terms of the second snowstorm, so again, the second snowstorm is of course a lot more uncertain, especially with the two main computer models still in pretty big disagreements regarding snowfall forecast. But I'm leaning a little bit more to GFS model. I'm forecasting 1 to 3 inches extending to the metropolitan area of Washington DC, West Virginia, Ohio, New Jersey is getting involved, New York City, Philadelphia, as well as Boston. Just note that I'm expecting a little bit more, right around 3 to 6 inches, as we should see the low pressure system develop a little bit more as this moves further northeastward, which would allow for more snowfall. And of course, the cold air will be a factor as well. That will encourage more snowfall. So I expect around this much snow in the interior northeast portion at this time. But again, it's still subject to change, so make sure to keep that in mind throughout the northeast. But I thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content. Make sure to like if you like this video, and make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather-related content. And I hope you guys have a great day.